friends. This is going to be a story that's connected to that Coolidge case. This is a story of a woman by the name of Sandra Valade. And essentially what happened with her is she had been murdered as well as Pamela Mason. And she was murdered with a .22 bullet. And they knew that. And they had found her. They found Pamela Mason in a snowbank. And remember, Coolidge had this thing with inclement weather. Anytime there was a blizzard, he went off. Went weird. And it was always there was always some supposition that he had some sort of spell, and did whatever and killed Pamela Mason. But Sandra Valade was also found at or about the same time, and so she was found, and they had the problems with the gun that they had taken from his car, from his vehicle, because the search warrant wasn't exactly written up right with this guy Coolidge the murderer. And Coolidge essentially had cut a deal with them for second-degree murder on the Pamela Mason charge. But they couldn't get a conviction, and he wouldn't cut a deal on the Sandra Valade case because they claimed that the murder took place at a given time. But the rifle he had won at some contest somewhere, at like an Elks Club type, at some club anyways. It wasn't the Elks Club, but it was something like that. He had won a rifle. It was a .22 rifle. And he had won it, but it had no serial numbers on it. So they tried to argue that he actually had two rifles that didn't have serial numbers on it. Now, the rifle came back for sure with Pamela Mason, but there were always questions with the Sandra Valade case, and he would not cop to that one at all. All right. Technically, I mean, that case is still, technically it's unsolved. But everybody knew that it was him that did it. Or it was alleged that he did it. And it was never actually proven, though. But her name was Sandra Valade. But now, this is going to get a whole lot of weird real quick, because there was a woman at the time, and her name was Rena Paquette. And Rena Paquette was kind of connected to Sandra Valade. And Rena Paquette is connected to another case that we're going to get to later on. And that guy's name was Danny Paquette. And you're going to hear about that case in the next video, because it's a separate case altogether. But this guy Coolidge was something. And so technically, he probably was, well, they know he was the murderer of Sandra Valade too. Now, here are some things about Coolidge that most people talked about, but it never really made it into the court case. All right. Now, it's said when he was overseas, possibly as a soldier, I don't know if he served, but possibly as a soldier. And I was told it was in Europe and possibly in Italy, that a series of females went missing. And at the time, Coolidge had been there at that place. And this was discussed with people. People had discussed this. But the authorities over there in Europe, and I believe it was Italy, they didn't believe it was an American. They just didn't, they for one reason or another, they didn't think that he was part of that. All of these questions began to come up after the Pamela Mason murder. And so he could have been in Europe doing the same thing. Now, I'm not sure if he was in the military, but he could have been in the military at that time over in Europe. So it would have been after that he came back here, worked for a series of people as a delivery driver. And Sandra Valade, yeah, she was one of the people that was murdered by, she was murdered for sure, but she was one of them that he probably took out. Now, the rifle, as I recall, was a .22 Mossberg. And I believe that's what they took into evidence. I don't want to use the term illegally, but improperly, we'll say. And that's why he only got second-degree murder in that case. Now, the next case is going to be the Paquette case. And like I always say, this is going to get a whole lot of weird real quick because things are all intertwined here in the state of New Hampshire. If you like stories like this, wow! Like, comment, subscribe! It's Shanda Bear out.